Oh, the blood we have spilled. Oh, the treaties that were broken. For the leaders you have still got to die for your sin. Got to die for your sin. Now a new day must begin. Got to die for yourself. For the tribes you terminated, for the myth you keep alive, for the land you confiscated, for our freedom you deprived. Cause to die for your sin, Custer died for your sin. Now a new day must begin. Custer died for yourself. Custer died for your sin. Custer died for your sin. Now a new day must begin. Custer died for yourself. For the truth that you pollute. For the life that you have cost, for the good you prostitute, and for all that we have lost. Custer died for your sin. Custer died for your sin. Now a new day must begin. Custer died for yourself. Custer died for your sin. Custer died for your sin. Now a new day must begin. Custer died for yourself. Custer died.
Okay. I'm going to talk about Texas, but my brother was available and I've been trying to get him on the show forever anyway. And so we could talk about native Texas, Comanche, but we're doing this series on Red Cloud and Crazy Horse, and it all relates. It's history repeating itself right now in Gaza in a way is what happened to a lot of American Indians. And I don't think people really know. They think they know. They're like, oh, yes, they killed the Indians. No, they don't know how bad the sickness went, scalping pubic hair and things. Just like God's chosen lunatics. But before I bring him in, let's say a word about Texas. Hello to chat, by the way. We were part of Texit before it was cool. Just want to say, I went to Texas. I met with Rhonda and company about Texit a long time ago. We could see this coming. 25 states now supporting Texas, sending their National Guard. It's basically the entire South except for North Carolina. I guess we're always the last to secede. It's embarrassing. But Yeah, they're standing up against the federal government once again. They said remove the barbed wire. Texas said, how about we double it? They said remove the barbed wire. How about we triple it? Okay, then. How about you get rid of welfare and this whole thing goes away? I say you can build walls, you can put up barbed wire, you can do all this shit if you want. But if you really don't want ants in your house, then don't pour sugar on the floor. That's my 2 cents there. We'll see what happens. That's an ongoing story right now. And it's really just a big FU to the whole Biden government. Mayorka is a rotten rat-faced Jew that works for a foreign state. He has identity politics that ties him to, the real estate god that thinks they can drop houses on babies and just blow people up and ethnic cleanse. And he wants. They don't care about America. It's America first, second, and third. It's America never. Dead. I hope Texans are starting to realize it. That you shouldn't have people in the administration in charge of your border who don't want you to exist, who feel like they are superior to you and want you to be replaced. Mayorka belongs in a Tijuana prison. That's my 2 cents there. Okay. Scott, how you doing? You live down there?
I'm all right, man. Every day above ground's good.
Every day above ground is good unless you're I don't know if you saw it. There was a teenager who I guess he wasn't above ground technically, but he was still alive for 8 days in the rubble, starving to death. And they found him, and he looked like this emaciated skeleton thing with his crushed legs, but he was still alive. And I'm just sitting there thinking, how the fuck do they just sit there? The world just watches Israel do this. They just watch them murder children. And then they just laugh like, we called him a human shield. We told you to leave.
I've never seen anything. It's unprecedented. I mean, even the shit we're about to talk about isn't as bad as this. I mean, these guys can't escape. They can't escape. You've got a group of people that are walled in with machine gun turrets and concrete walls that can't leave, and you're indiscriminately bombing them and killing thousands of children. That's genocide by the most narrow of definitions. I mean, some of what we're about to talk about from 150 years ago
they set the bar that high. Like,
it's
not genocide until you kill every single person. I'm like, oh, is there nothing in between? It's not wrong until you kill them all. Is that? It's like, oh well, we just killed half of them or whatever. Like, oh, that's okay. Fuck you.
That's extinction. Genocide is just the act of killing a group of people. Indiscriminately.
People confuse extinction and genocide, and it doesn't matter. It's like, that's why I hate using these terms and stuff. It's like, it's mass murder. It's a war crime. You're blowing up apartments with people in them. You're smothering little kids. That you have a famine across the entirety of Gaza Strip. And when people went to go to the food trucks, the Israelis shot them.
Yep.
Civilians trying to get food for their kids. They sat there and they blocked the trucks and had a party, filmed the party because they thought that would be okay to put all over TikTok and Twitter and Facebook. And it is. You can put it on YouTube. They don't care.
Israel gets away with murder, literally. And I don't think that we've ever had a period in history anywhere on earth where one group was allowed to do to another group what they're doing on this scale without any, remorse whatsoever. Like,
well, at least with Custer and stuff, there was an attempt. Like, at least there was some division. Like, some people in the army are like, no, don't do that. And others just disobeyed. At least they had to lie to the public, because if they didn't lie, the public wouldn't stomach it. Israel openly just celebrates bombing the hell out of everybody. And they're like, ha, ha, ha. It doesn't bother the Israeli public. It's bothering the world. That's what they don't understand. Like, you guys, the whole world isn't as sick and twisted as Israel. They don't think this is funny, what you're putting up all over the place.
No, they developed hyper nationalism after World War II, and the ones that did move in to what's now Israel, they got hyper nationalism tied into race and religion as well because of this collective experience of World War II. And so they just really, it's like if you had the worst byproduct of Christianity, like the KKK during its heyday or something, and put them in charge of schools and everything else, and just had decades of indoctrination of like the worst, most ignorant shit imaginable, and that's now normal.
I don't think the Klan would even murder a baby.
No, I don't. Yeah, I know. Like there is ignorant. Like, this is the level of hatred that is unprecedented. They could really sit there and shoot babies and not care and just laugh. They have absolutely. They don't see Palestinians as people, and their hatred has no border, no mercy. They don't care. There's nothing. You could light them all on fire and they wouldn't even piss on them. I mean, they just, there's no humanity. It's gone. They were just raised with hatred collectively.
October 7th. It's like John Brown. Well, I could just rape and murder people because, I'm doing it in the name of fighting slavery. No, buddy, you're just a thug with a theme. That's it. And 90% of the crap they're saying about October 7th is made up. No one got raped on October 7th. No one got raped so hard it broke their pelvis bone. No one got raped so hard it broke their pelvis bone as they raped them on top of corpses. No one was gang raped on top of corpses so hard that they broke it. Like, it just keeps escalating. They said not only did they kill babies, they hung them on the clothing line. What? And then it was 40 beheaded ones. And then they blew up a nursery. And none of this shit happened. None of it happened. They did not hang babies on a clothing line. No one got beheaded. There was one 10-month-old baby that died on October 7th, and it died because Israeli tanks just fired into the neighborhood, the Kitzvah or whatever. They fired on all those dancing Israelis with Apache helicopters, and it's kind of ironic that it's named the Apache helicopter, and then they end up firing on the colonists.
Yeah.
Geronimo.
Yeah. Yeah, we could do him too, but whatever you want. I mean,
where should we start? Hey, chat, Shekelchats for Dawson and Dawson time. We're going to talk about Texas later.
The cow incident's a good place to start because it's early and Crazy Horse is 14 years old. So this is going to kind of shape how he sees the colonizers because it's his first real interaction with them. I mean, he's seen them, but it's his first real interaction, and that's a good place to start. The cow incident, we can start there.
All right, so the War of Northern Aggression is over, minus the 55 years of Reconstruction.
No, not yet. This is before that. This is 54. So
way back. They hadn't even begun. They just
this one Crazy Horse is a kid.
1951, they extend the voting rights to people who don't own property, and everything went to hell because they ended up electing Lincoln, even though his name wasn't on the ballot in many states. But here we're rolling into 1854, just 6 years before South Carolina will secede, and then the Civil War will kick off at the very end of 1860 to 1860.
5 years after the Gold Rush, so the Oregon Trail is established, but it's very raw. And one of the stopping points, even in the 1980s video game Oregon Trail, is Fort Laramie, right? And it's like a trading post where you can get supplies. And
Gold Rush 1849 comes right after the Mexican War of 1848, which in large part was won by Robert E. Lee. At least one without so many casualties because of him.
California is now a U.S. state, and then there's a few years later they find gold, and then everybody's trekking out there. And
And Lincoln
Fort Laramie
supported
was
that secession movement. Huh.
yeah.
It was okay then.
I
There
don't
was
know
no problem with legality of
that.
secession then.
Yeah. Anyway, the natives also would camp around the fort sometimes because they also benefited from trade. And it's just a giant trading post. It will become the fur trade capital kind of. They'll use a lot of natives for that and then build this fur empire really, and then turn on the very people that helped them build it. But that's another story. Anyway, outside of Fort Laramie, there's a lot of hustle and bustle. There's a lot of different groups that'll camp outside the fort and rest for a few days and trade and get resupplied and then move on. And one of them was this group of Mormons that were going, guess where?
Utah. But tell people
And
where Fort Laramie is. Let's try to get a map. I'm trying to find a map right now, but
it's near the Nebraska border in Wyoming. So southeast part of the state. And it's high elevation but not in the mountains. So they do get snow and things in winter. Anyway, this cow from one of the Mormon camps wandered into a mini Kanju camp. The mini Kanju is a band of Lakota. So there's 7 bands of Lakota.
By the way, this is the second most famous cow after Miss O'Leary's cow.
Yep.
Which kicked over the lantern that started the fire in Chicago. I think Miss O'Leary's cow came from Atlanta.
Yeah.
And that was their revenge against Sherman.
That and the boat that burned off of Memphis right after too. We're getting all in the weed. Anyway,
from Andersonville too, it was full of prisoners that had suffered through that whole thing and then never made it home.
This cow doesn't have a name, or if it does, I don't know what it is, but it
has a name. It's called the Ghost of William Reed. No.
Well, this is before that. So this is in the 50s, 1854. And the cow wanders into the Lakota camp and they eat it because beef is what's for dinner. I mean, why not? It looked like a stray cow wandered in, so they cooked it and ate it. Well, the owner of the cow went to the fort and complained. And this guy named John Grattan, little fucker, takes 30 soldiers, marches into another camp of Lakota that had nothing to do with it, right? But they somewhat know the chief there. His name is Conjuring Bear. And somehow they hold him responsible for what this other band did because they didn't understand that the 7 bands of Lakota, even though they speak the same language and have the same religion and culture and sometimes a war and they'll link up, they also have independence. So you can't tell this band what to do. You know, the Brule can't tell the Miniconju what to do, can't tell the Oglala what to do. They're all independent. And the chief is trying to explain this. But the interpreter is this drunk French guy who's really drunk. And he's saying, like, they're all going to kill you if you don't give them a cow and all this crap. And so they offer a cow. They say, you can take a cow from our herd, go pick out whichever one you want. And this guy,
cow for a cow.
Cow for a cow. He's like, no, we want $25. That's what we want. And that's a lot of money back then. And so, well, I don't have $25. How about I give you a horse? And a horse is worth more than a cow. And no, I don't want a horse. So look, just to keep the peace, even though we didn't even kill this cow, we're not responsible for it at all. It's a different band. I am still willing to give you 2 horses for this cow. Basically, no, right? We want $25. Well, you're not going to get it. So, you know the phrase fuck around and find out. If ever there's a time in history where that applies, this is probably it. Grattan has...
Hold on, before you get to that. Wait. There's a Shekelchat from Scared Crow. who says, what will it take to stop Israel now? Is there any way to halt this current murder spree, or are they just going to continue until they're done? They're going to continue until the resistance stops them. You have Hamas killing them. You have Yemen hurting them economically by blocking sea trade and seizing ships. And you have Hezbollah picking them off in the north. Israel will not, they will not bow to any kind of pressure about what they're doing morally or the outrage and disgust of them murdering all these people. They don't care. Psychopaths lack that capacity. They only care about themselves. And so as more IDF, or we should call it the ITF, Israeli terrorist forces, die in Gaza, and then their mothers kvetch at home, that's what will put it into it, a higher casualty rate. Nothing else is going to do it, because realistically, if the world was going to do anything, it would have happened months ago. There is nothing they can do because America is in the pocket of Israel. If you want to know why America is in the pocket of Israel, go see the Substack I wrote last night. What we got here is a situation rewinding back to 1854. Just because a cow, wandered into Lakota territory, one band eats it. They blame the Americans blame a different band. They tried to negotiate. They offered him one of their own cows. They offered him a horse. They offered him 2 horses. They said, no, we want this money that we know you don't have, because they're really just looking for a pretext and excuse to force them out of there and annex the territory for themselves.
Right.
That's the fuck around part. Now let's continue.
Right. Okay. So Grattan has 2 cannons, 2 artillery, and he's got a crew of like 4 guys at each one, right? And they're above the camp, and everybody can see him. He's got him out there in a threatening posture, and all he's got to do is wave his hand, and they'll open up with artillery at any moment. So he waits until he gets to the gate and is backing out with the rest of his men. He's only got 30 guys total, and one of them, possibly Grattan, we'll never know who it was, but one of them turned around and shot Conjuring Bear, this chief that had been not more than tolerant and offered him 2 horses and all that stuff. They shot him, and it didn't kill him, but he would die something like 8 or 9 days later from the wounds. And that was the dumbest thing that they could have possibly done, because this is the camp that includes Crazy Horse. And within the first second, they fired a volley of arrows and killed all of the guys at the cannons. Killed.
Took out their artillery first.
Just took out their artillery like that. And that's what Grattan was counting on. But they had already moved people.
Real quick, one advantage of an arrow over a gun is if you put bulwarks or a wall in front of you, it can still arc over that and hit you.
Right.
Doesn't have as much stopping power, doesn't go as far, there's a lot of disadvantages, but it can go over obstacles.
Right. That is one advantage, especially have a lot that come up and rain down, and they had more than enough. Red Cloud is there, Crazy Horse is there, all of the people that'll become famous later are there, and they just mow down Grattan's men and they kill all of them. So all 30 of them get killed. The only Lakota that was killed was Conjuring Bear, which is what started it. And then they mutilated them, They're pissed. Their chief had just got killed, and he'd wallow around in agony for over a week before he died. And you threatened him with cannons and everything else, so you get what you get.
And they'd seen what that had been going on. They knew what cannons would do. They knew what these people were.
This is not the first, they'd been getting kicked around for over 2 decades now by these same guys. And, the fort itself is an affront kind of, but you go in there and shoot the chief, you're going to die.
Right after he tried to negotiate with you.
Yep. The only one that lived was the drunk French interpreter. They let him go. And You know, he admitted that he was pretty wasted and was kind of taunting them and made it worse. But anyway, that happens, and the reaction is to tell the exact opposite of what I just said. And they have the Lakota slaughter Grattan, who did nothing wrong, and just this bullshit version of the story is what comes back east. They send this guy General Harney, who even by the 1800 standards was a racist prick. He'd already been court-martialed a couple times, and just through corruption and bribery wiggled his way out of it. He hanged 8 guys, Seminole Indians down in Florida, in front of their wives, and he tortured his own men. He had one of them wear a spike collar for like 26 days, this heavy spike collar that weighed 30 pounds, for refusing to just something. He was a asshole, right? So he goes into a Brule camp, which is another.
Who is this again?
General Harney with an N. William Harney. Fucking lifelong prick, man. It would take 2 hours to go through all the atrocities and bullshit that he did before and after this. I mean, he's like one of the worst people that ever lived.
He's a Ralph Lane level asshole. KGB Josh says, it seems there are parallels between the Union Army stealing from the Lakota and the IDF stealing from Palestinians. Yeah, this isn't even the Union Army. This is just America at this point.
This is the Union. Well, it's the Army, but
Union,
it's not.
It's Yankees, but it's the Army in general.
It's yeah. There's North and South involved, mostly North, but it's actually more like the guys from out there in Nebraska, Missouri, like kind of that area. But a lot of them are from Chicago too. Anyway, this prick.
There's a lot of criminals because one of the choices was, prison or go west. Mm-hmm. Just like Australia.
Harney was I think he was really just a sadistic fuck. And he used the Army because he signed, oh, you get to do this, sign me up. And he just got in position of power and abused it. And it's amazing how many times he avoided jail because his track record is horrendous. Well, then he in this particular case, he attacks a village in Nebraska that's not even the same territory the Indians will do. And he knew that the men were gone because in the fall and the spring, the Lakota have these giant buffalo hunts where they go off and hunt buffalo. So there's very few people left behind that aren't either women or children or old men. And, Harney rolled up on them with artillery, cavalry, and infantry and just demanded, blood. And they tried to have a white flag and didn't want to fight, and he just slaughtered them anyway. A lot of the women ran into caves, and then they were stuck in the caves, and his men just waited at the entrance and fired indiscriminately. There was a girl that they found crawling around.
Why would you follow orders like that? Like, let's just wipe out all these women in a cave.
Because they hated Indians, man. And Harney had guys that were just ruthless.
They're not even Christian. They're not people.
Exactly. So they shot this little girl. She was only about 7, and the bullet passed through both of her feet. And as she was crawling around, they bashed her head in with rifle butts. They skinned them, the pubic hairs of the women. They stripped them naked, and they saw pubic hair scalps that they took as trophies. They cut off breast to take home as trophies and put on sticks. The Lakota will call
stuff that the Israelis made up, cutting boobs off and stuff that didn't happen. The Americans actually did.
Yes,
always guilty of their own sin, of their own accusations. I always say your accusations are confessions.
Yeah, Harney's a piece of shit, man, and he'll stay in charge for a while, and he.
Why would you cut off someone's tits? Like, what's the point? That's funny to hang on the wall or something? Ugh.
Sick, man. Some of the limbs that were cut off in the Sand Creek massacre were on display in bars in Denver for over 100 years. right? They just really until it was the 1970s before they got rid of that crap and took it out of the display cases. That, Sand Creek is a little later on, but this is what's we call it the Harney Massacre, and that is going to kick off the first Sioux War with the Lakota against the U.S., and they'll be joined by the Cheyenne, at least the Northern Cheyenne, and the Arapaho. And the Civil War is going to kind of put a pause for 4 years on this, where all of the focus is, back east, north and south fighting each other. And as soon as the Civil War is over, it ends in 1865. By 1866, the U.S. is right back into Wyoming and Montana and Nebraska, and they're gonna slaughter 150 people at the Sand Creek Massacre. Black Kettle was a Cheyenne leader, and same thing. He checked every box that they asked. Everything they asked him to do, he did. They told him to display a white flag and an American flag in the middle of his camp. He had two giant ones. And they rolled up, and right after the men had left for the hunt, and slaughtered the women and children and smashed kids' brains out. And there were some Colorado volunteers, this is going to happen in Colorado, that didn't participate, like Silas Soul, who the Arapaho have a holiday for. Silas Soul not only won't fire a shot and let anybody in his company fire a shot, but he actually testifies in court about it later. And then for doing that, he gets shot in the head. And the guy who shot him in the head fled to Mexico, and then they caught him and whatever. But, he was the only commander that didn't go along with it. There were other people who did testify, and there were other people who way later talked about it, but most of them were scared, especially after Silas got shot. And they said, they were just... No, because he resigned. What he did to avoid the court martial, at least they were gonna court martial him. Like, you're not allowed to do what they did. Like, Israel could do that and not even get in trouble. But Chivington, he resigned from the army, so they couldn't court martial him, and his reputation was ruined. And I think he died of like cancer or something. And he never but he should have gone to prison, man, for that. That was so in the wintertime, and they burned all the lodges, and the people who did, they had to go out with whatever they could grab, a lot of them wounded, and trek north to another camp, and hope that they would have mercy and take them in. And the camp that they ended up going to was that of Crazy Horse and Red Cloud, who kind of adopted the Cheyenne after that, and they would join forces. And Red Cloud was already pissed and like doing pesky things, attacking wagon trains and stagecoaches and that kind of crap. But he had a beautiful strategy of how to defeat the U.S., and then he did it. And it took, years, but he was able to do it. And that's the story I was really going to get into. And I guess you kind of starts with that stuff in the 1850s, and then you kind of fast forward to 1866 is when you start Red Cloud's War. And that is something that armies around the world have been studying ever since. Because just to paint a picture, this Lakota territory, Cheyenne territory, is bigger than Texas. All right. It's mostly going to be southern Montana, like around the Powder River, or as Little Bighorn, the next to each other. That area in southern Montana, basically the entire state of Wyoming, a little bit of Nebraska, a little bit of both Dakotas. I mean, it's a huge area. And it's also covered with
Explain
snow
why they can't
and the
just send
worst
like
blizzards that you can imagine.
40,000 people out
Yeah.
there after them.
So
Tell people why that
yeah,
doesn't work.
as I get asked this all the time, like, why didn't the U.S. send in a 50,000 man army and just crush them? Because at the peak, Sitting Bull, Red Cloud, those guys never had more than 2,000 warriors. But you can't send 50,000 men into there because you have to supply them, and you have to find Red Cloud in this giant area. You don't know where he is. And
You have
they never
massive
knew.
temperature fluctuations between the day and the night out there in like Wyoming, where it can
Yeah,
get
it could drop
freezing and
70
then
degrees. So there are no cities. There are no, it's not like when the North invaded the South and they take Nashville and then they stockpile all of their crap at Nashville and use it as a supply hub. And then they move down to Chattanooga and then whatever. There are no cities. There are no buildings. Everything that they bring in, the U.S. Army will build series of forts, but you can't house 50,000 people in a fort. And if you do, that's a lot of wagons that have to bring in all the food, all the gunpowder, all the blankets, everything that you have. There are no stores out there, right? So those supply lines that are hundreds of miles long are really easy to get clipped.
very
So
noticeable and very vulnerable. Yeah.
very vulnerable and all strung out. And not only that,
And even what
but any
rails you
horse or
have
cow that,
anywhere along that rail line, they can tear it up.
yeah, and or no, they don't have any railroads going this direction yet either.
Yep.
So what are you going to do? You go out there with cavalry and your horses are going to starve to death. You're going to freeze to death. You know, it's not an easy place to go invade. In southern Montana, if you took a piece of paper and crumbled it up and then just kind of unfolded it, and then whatever the highest peak on there was about 800 feet higher than the lowest valley. It is just a series of hills and folds that looks like a gigantic maze, but it's a gigantic maze that the natives have been living in, and that the U.S., the whites, have not really charted at all. And so they don't know where they're going to get ambushed constantly because they don't know the terrain. And what they did is they turned to the Shoshone and the Crow, who are traditional enemies of the Lakota, and that's who also knows the area. And without them, the U.S. wouldn't been able to do anything. But they had the hard way first, and they did start building forts, and they could house 1,000 or more at some of these forts, and they would go on campaigns, and they just kept losing.
Well, they do have superior firearms. I'll talk about a little bit before we get to what actually happened out there. The type of guns that were available,
so
what they chose and why they chose that over the other one.
There's 100 different kinds of guns to choose from because the Civil War has just ended, and a lot of them were invented during that war. And what Custer's troops and what the U.S. troops decide in general to get is these Springfield rifles that were really common in the Civil War. They're muzzle loaders, and that's not good on horseback because you're just think about it. Reloading while on a horse takes a lot, right? So they modify them into these trapdoor Springfields, and what that is right up next to the hammer. They put a little trap door in the barrel, and you could just slide the bullet in, shut the door, aim and fire, percussion cap, right? So it's actually faster than a repeating rifle. The repeating rifles, the Spencers and Henrys, yes, you can pop, 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 but after that, it takes like 2 minutes to reload. The Springfield, you only get one shot with that trap door, but it's boom. It's like reload. It's like a Red Rider, just done. It only takes 5 seconds for a trained person to reload and fire again. And the Springfields were accurate, and they were extremely good at long range, which back then long range is like 600 to 800 yards. But you could hit a tree or a person at 600 yards easily with a trap door Springfield. but they're not good up close because they're kind of long and cumbersome. So for up close, they had these 6-shot Colt revolvers. So all of these guys have 6-shot Colt revolvers and trapdoor Springfields, and they've got, pretty much unlimited amount of ammunition. Is whatever they could carry. They'd usually carry like 100 rounds each when they would go out from the fort, and that's what they've got. And they've got horses and even a couple of cannons. The natives are all mounted. They have a hodgepodge of guns. Most of the time, they like the Sharps carbine, which is a really short gun that is pretty easy to use from horseback. It doesn't have the range of the Springfield, but it is pretty easy to reload and is durable, like in the rain and all that crap. It's not going to malfunction so it's pretty good. They also are using bow and arrows, but unlike the natives in the East, the bows are not made out of wood. They're made out of horn or a combination of both and sinew. So they actually punch, they're killing buffalo with them, for God's sakes. Going through that, and it definitely will go through a person. So they've got a little bit more fire, not as much as a bullet, but more than a normal bow and arrow. And they're the best horsemen in the world because they start riding at a full gallop and hunting when they're like 6 or 7 years old. The guys do. So Crazy Horse used to play games as a kid called Kick 'em Off the Horse, which is exactly what it sounds like, where they would ride around in a meadow and try to kick each other off the horse. And the last person to get kicked off the horse won. So, we think that we played rough in the 80s. I don't remember playing Kick 'em Off the Horse at a full gallop, but that's what they did as children. So these are not, like white kids from Santa Monica. This is the last true warriors. I mean, they don't plant shit. They don't farm. They don't do fuck all except hunt buffalo and fuck girls. That's it. That's their whole life. They know how to build a fire and a teepee and whatever. That's it. They don't deal with anything else. They follow the buffalo herd. They move around as free as the wind in the area bigger than Texas and do whatever they want. And these guys are coming in and saying, oh, you need to live in this little box and start planting stuff. And they don't want to do it.
Pay taxes.
So I'm not losing my freedom to these guys. Yeah. And they're like,
have a landlord that collects all the money while the rest of you live in squalor. That sounds great.
Yeah. Right. So that Red Cloud in
Don't worry, this fat guy in a black dress screaming out of a black book with a dead guy nailed to a stick hung around his neck is going to tell you how to be moral.
Yeah. Yeah. So they at this point, Red Cloud is not quite, he's early 40s, and Crazy Horse is about 26 or whatever at this point. So she's in the mid-20s. And so Red Cloud is the chief, and Crazy Horse is just like his attack dog. Right? Crazy Horse was the greatest warrior that ever lived. I'll go ahead and say that I'm talking about fucking Mongols, everything. This guy, it's unbelievable.
He's up there with Admiral Yi.
I mean, he's number one in my opinion. So here's the deal. He had a vision, which they all would do, where they take some hallucinogens and starve themselves and get into like this state and just see a vision. And he was out laying on some cliff, and it started a hailstorm, and there's lightning and hail coming down, and he saw an eagle fly by, and a single feather fell right to him, which he wore in his hair for the rest of his life. And he saw a vision of bullets and arrows whizzing all around him, but none of them hit him. And then he's riding his horse, and his own people pop out of the ground and pull him off his horse. That was his vision. So when he would go into battle after that, he painted a red lightning bolt on his face. He wore the eagle feather, and he had little white dots all over his body to represent the hail. And he said, no bullet or arrow could kill me. And there's about 1,000 times where he should have been shot and wasn't. The first was they're fighting some other Indians, and it was a little 4-on-4 match, and they were out in the open, and the guys they were fighting were behind some boulders. And Crazy Horse went up there with his horse, and they're all shooting at him, and none of them hit him. And he lost his bow because his horse got killed, and he fell off the horse. Now he's a sitting duck, and they're firing at him, and nobody hit him. Picks up his bow, runs out by the boulders, kills one of them with a bow, kills one of them with his own gun. Now, I mean, he's at point blank range. There's two other guys. They fire, or one of them misfires, one of them fires and misses somehow, and then he kills those two, cuts one of them's heart out.
He had the ability to turn everybody into stormtroopers.
He just, they couldn't shoot for shit all of a sudden. He does this over and over again. So one of the things they did that worked really well, and I can't believe how many times they did it, and it just kept working. But I guess dead men tell no tales. They would take a decoy party, which he always volunteered to lead or was selected to lead, which is a high honor, and about 10 guys, and they'll go up to a fort or a huge group of the army camped out somewhere and just hoop and holler and moon them and yell at them and maybe fire and get them all pissed off, and they go chase them, and they go around the next hill, and there's 1,000 people waiting for them, and just shower them with arrows and kill them. And this is one of Crazy Horse's favorite games. So what happens is the
Teps used to do that. The Turks would do that too.
You had the Black Hills were in dispute, right? And it's a sacred land. And then they also found gold
from
and
Ezra.
Silver. Yeah. They don't want them in the Black Hills in the U.S. Grant was actually not that bad in the beginning. He's like, all right, well, what if we don't live there? We don't build anything there. We just have a road going through there. And he's like,
no.
They're that bad. The Union needs to build railroads to connect all the way to California.
Yeah, this is why he wasn't that bad.
The money behind the railroad said, quit agitating the Indians because they're going to tear up the railroad. We won't be able to sell tickets, and we're all going to lose money.
Yeah. The railroad's going to be finished in 1969, right? And it's a transcontinental railroad. It's impossible to guard 3,000 miles of track like that, especially going through that territory. And it'd be you don't have to win. All you have to do is tear the track up now and then, and people don't feel safe, won't buy tickets. And so they're kind of like, all right, let's back off of this a little bit and try to, be reasonable. That's what Grant's doing. But Sherman and Sheridan, so the after the Civil War, the whole country is divided up into these military districts. And Sheridan is the guy that said the only Indian's is a dead Indian. He's in charge of that area. So when these miners and stuff are sneaking in there and getting gold and pissing people off, just with their presence, because them going in there with all their cattle and everything else scared the buffalo away. And the natives are like, man, the only thing we ask is you left this area alone, and you're over there tearing up this sacred ground with machines. And Sheridan didn't do shit. He just let them do it because he hates Indians. And Grant really can't make him do it from DC. Man, he didn't really try either. But anyway, that's what kind of the fuss is about. And so that's why Red Cloud comes up with this plan. And his plan was to attack 5 different places at once and all on the same day. And really, the only target was this thing called Platte Station, which is a little tiny outpost that has a bridge across the Platte River. and it also has a telegraph station. And he wanted to get rid of that because he kind of needed, that was step one of his plan, is to get rid of that telegraph station, to that was the only one for 50 miles in all directions. So you get rid of that, and then they're kind of blind out there. The U.S. would be. So that's his main goal. And to do it, he knows as soon as he attacks that reinforcements are going to get sent from all over the place. So what he does is the other 4 attacks are just bullshit. Just light a fire, run away, fire a few shots or whatever, and get the U.S. Army running in circles, And so they're running around in circles, literally, like chasing people in circles while he attacks Platte Station. And they cut the telegraph right away, and then they attack. And it's not a very big battle, but basically Crazy Horse got 28 soldiers to chase him, and this guy named Casper, which Casper, Wyoming is named after, Casper Collins, or yeah, he gets shot in the forehead with an arrow, and the guys at the fort see him fall off his horse, and he was actually trying to help a wounded guy. All 28 of them got killed. That left the fort and chased Crazy Horse into an ambush and were murdered. And then there was a freight train coming, meaning a bunch of wagons carrying loads of freight and these big box cars. And they got attacked as well. And they had Spencer repeating rifles and Henrys and all that. And they had a good show, and they made a circle and did okay for a while, and then the natives crawled up there on their bellies and lit the freights on fire and killed them all. So no one lived that left the fort, and no one who tried to come into the fort lived either. It's just the few who stayed in the fort, but they're screwed because they don't have any telegraph wire. And he left them alone, actually, because his whole goal was just to cut that line and keep it cut. They sent somebody out of the fort to repair it, and they killed that guy. And they're like, "Look, this is done," because now that telegraph station was out of the picture, and that wire is gone, and they can't communicate, then they don't have any eyes on him. Even the guys at fort can get up high and see his movements. They can't tell anybody, right? So he's also probably unable to storm the actual fort with those cannons and the walls and all that without a loss of life. And it's just, what's the point? He's not killing them if it's going to cost his own forces a bunch of guys. They're already useless. Just leave them in that fort to starve. He moves on. And the reaction of the U.S. is to send huge armies into the Lakota territory to try and find him and kill him.
3 different
armies. They're going after Red Cloud, and they're going after Sitting Bull. And it's 2 different groups. Sitting Bull's guys have guns, shitty guns, but they have guns. Red Cloud's guys only use bow and arrow, but they have Crazy Horse. And like 6 or 7 of them have guns, like single digit number, right? So that's basically not having guns. And they can't find them. They send 3 different armies out, 1 after Sitting Bull and 2 after Red Cloud. And Sitting Bull is watching them the whole time. He has spies going back and forth that are monitoring these armies' movements. It's pretty easy to find an army that's, if the bigger it is, the dust cloud. I mean, the Americans couldn't hide it all. And so he's watching them, and he's like, let me know when their horses start to die, because they're not finding water and they don't know where to graze. And Sitting Bull sets an ambush at the watering hole. And when the guys get there, all exhausted and dismount.
Pause just a second before we continue on. Let people digest a lot of the stuff you already said. If you're watching this on Rumble right now, go ahead and hit refresh. It'll have an ad. Go ahead, wait the 5 seconds, hit it, take a break. That helps us get revenue. I'm going to try and gain the system. No, just kidding. Take a break, take a pee, take whatever. I just want to say, like, this is super interesting. there's a lot of names and things for people to follow. I wish we could have maps or something like this, AI this out. Scott has said this whole series on his Substack, Red Cloud, Two Crazy Horse, all the way to the Greasy Grass, Little Bighorn, starting with the Sand Creek Massacre onward. It's all out there, and we actually did do an AI for like one section of it. And it's something, these stories are a lot better when you can see the campfires and the horses and the, some visuals to it than just him talking or the two of us talking. That is something we want to do in the future. If I had a tower, we could do that. Still don't have that. That's I've never been more triggered about anything. But they, a couple of days ago, they sent us a slip saying to pay taxes on it. And then my wife was on the phone with him today, arguing about something. It's I don't know if I'm in North or South Korea sometimes, but if you're Korean, everything's fine. But if you're not a person. You can't use the hospital. You can't use the mail. You can't buy a cell phone plan. You can't do shit unless you're Korean. So I kind of agree with that. It keeps the Chinese out. So they have to have very strict immigration. And what they do is like, yeah, you can come over, but you can't do any long-term stuff because you're not supposed to be here. I just keep going back and forth to Japan because I still don't have a visa. And that's another story, even though I've done everything legal. And I am married to a Korean. And this is how nope, don't have a tower. When we get one, we'll be getting that on. I'm going to play for you real quick before we get back to to Sitting Bull calendar commercial, because you can still get them through the whole month of January. And I believe I have that queued up. This is a this day in history type calendar. And then we have a bunch of based Asian babes just to piss off the white supremacists. Here we go.
Okay, next question. What is it, CNN? Oh, you want a question? Are you a piece of shit? Yes, you are. Next question. MSNBC? Yeah, fuck yourself. WAPO? WAPO? Why isn't your hand raised, WAPO? Was I mean to you? Was I mean to you? Did Russia show up at your house, WAPO? It's okay. You can go home and cry on your dick-shaped pillow. Next question.
All right. It's fun. Oh, we had a big Shekelchat come in. I got two. We got one from Dogface Pony Soldier 33 for 10. Says, y'all Southerners never played Hot Piece of Butter? Hide a belt in a room, then your buddies look for it. Whoever finds it, whatever can whip anybody until they exit the room. Yankee stupidity at its finest. Well, wouldn't whoever hid the belt know where it was? I mean, that's the dumb game. Why don't you just all have belts and have a belt fight? It makes more sense.
Wait, what happened now? What do
They
they
hide
do?
a belt in a room, then your buddies look for it. Whoever finds it can whip anybody until they exit the room. Yankee stupidity at its finest.
Yeah, I never played that one.
Nah, we're heterosexual. So, all right. And then we got another big one. Super donation here. In fact, I think that deserves a triple. For those wondering, that's what women look like when they're not obese. 218 from P1 Dizzy. That is 109 for each of us. It says, Ryan, where exactly in which tab on your A&C website has links to books? That's his Scott's. Scott, any updates on your book, Turn to Movie, Red Rodanthe? Appreciate you good old boys. Well, let me answer the first question, then you answer the second question. If you go to A&C report, and then I believe you hit about, for some reason, there used to be a books tab, but nope, it isn't there. What the hell? Our books tab is missing. Thank you for pointing that out. Well, hooray. That's something I have to add. Yeah, you'd have to manually type in library, I guess. Thank you for pointing that out. It is not there. No wonder we haven't been selling books. That is all from the Ricky crap and migration and yada, 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 yada. We even built a new library, and then there's no fucking tab to it. Hooray. Thank you.
Oh, man. Red Rodanthe is moving along. They finished the screenplay, and now they're doing the pitch deck. And the pitch deck is what you send to investors. It's like a synopsis of the screenplay and bios of the characters and kind of who you imagine playing them. Just the main characters, not like Ice Cream Guy number 2 or whatever. So that's exciting. And I guess I don't really have any hand in it at this point. I'm just handing it off to the producers and letting them go. And they did ask for my help with the pitch deck, and I did that. So I feel like my role in it's done. I'm just excited to see if they can get it done and make it happen. I like the screenplay better than the book. So, you know, this might be one of those times where the movie's actually better than the book. But yeah. Where we're
talking about like Vince Vaughn and some other serious actors.
Yeah, you never know, man. You never know. Like, who knows? It's going to be like some A-list people. It's not some after-school special about a teenager and a bully. This is like, if it happens, it's going to be a real movie and possibly a miniseries because there's cliffhangers and built in on purpose to make 3 episodes. So I think miniseries are going to be the future because people don't want to get sucked into a whole series, but they kind of want that streaming. Like, I think miniseries are, I don't know, fits Red Rodanthe perfectly. So, yeah, you've got this little battle, right? 28 soldiers are killed. Telegraph wires cut. It's just kind of kicking off Red Cloud's war. And 3 armies are sent. Guy named Connor, guy named Sully, and forgot the other guy's name, but they basically wander out into this territory and just get lost. And their horses are dying, and the people are starving, and they're freezing, and they don't see anybody. But they're being monitored the entire time. Red Cloud and his guys are just stealing horses basically on a nightly basis and harassing them and fucking with them, but they don't ever see them. So the guys that went after Sitting Bull, who was a little further north toward Montana, they get ambushed at a watering hole. And he knows that, you know, when a horse is trying to drink, if it's really that bad off, you're going to dismount to give the horse a little bit of rest, lead them to the water. They're not going anywhere when they're that thirsty. They're going to drink. And the men can stretch their legs and get out of the saddle as well. And he lets them do that, and they're getting water, and then he stampeded all their horses and took like 400 horses in 12 seconds. So now you've got these guys out there that most of them have got to walk home, and it's over 100 miles that they have to walk the walk of shame, and they're getting harassed the whole way back.
Oh, it's like a Trail of Tears in reverse.
Yeah, fuck them, man. They went out there to kill them. And all he did was steal their horses and let them walk home and killed a few, I guess. But they do have a little battle where maybe 30 people die total between the two sides at one point. That battle is ended when a blizzard comes in and the temperature drops 68 degrees in 1 hour. And that freezes both sides, and pretty much everyone's building fires all night long, because if you don't, you're going to freeze to death. It's like negative 18, and they make pretty easy targets, a fire at night. So people, they pass in front of the fire, you see that flicker, they just fire kind of around the fire because they figure you're probably near it to get warm. And it's pretty brutal, but it's what you get. And that's part of the terrain. And this is what they're learning. The U.S. is learning the hard way that you can't find these guys. The weather can turn on you. You can lose your horses. There's nothing to eat or drink out there. They're going to walk back to the fort and learn from this lesson, except they don't, because they keep doing it. Eventually they'll learn. The other two columns fared a little worse. One of them did manage to stop an attack on a wagon train, which Red Cloud did. And all that attack on the wagon train was a diversion to keep Connor from assisting Scully, who was getting fucked up by Sitting Bull. And it worked. And then they did the same thing to them and stole their horses and made them walk back to the fort. So it's not like a huge death toll. It's nothing like the Civil War with thousands of people dying in these epic battles, but it's success nonetheless, because you're getting rid of the mobility. I mean, a few dozen people die here and there in these little scraps, but Red Cloud cannot afford to lose men. He's only got maybe 2,000 total, and he can't replace them. I mean, that's like everybody they got. And he is joined by Roman Nose of the Cheyenne, and that made up maybe 20% of the forces. You did have the dog soldiers, which are like an elite fighting force for the Cheyenne. So that's a plus.
But pony soldiers.
Yeah, kind of like that. And the more famous Cheyenne is Two Moons, which is the guy that's on the buffalo nickel. It's also the Redskin helmet. Two Moons is going to be at the Battle of Rosebuds later with Crazy Horse, like the battle right before Little Bighorn. But at this point, they're led by a guy named Roman Nose, who is also a badass. And he's with the Red Cloud side. And sometimes Sitting Bull, sometimes they're all together. Anyhow, it's basically one tribe at this point as far as military goes. And so the U.S., they get back to the forts and they're like, all right, we can't find them. We can't deal with the weather. How are we going to win? And they said, well, we're just going to have to build more forts and stockpile more people and take a little piece at a time. So they start building a series of forts, and they're kind of going from southeast to northwest along the Bozeman Trail. And the Fort Reno is the smallest one, and Fort Kearney is the biggest one, and then Fort Smith is the medium-sized one. Fort Smith is the furthest north, and then the big one's in the middle, and the small one is in the southeast. Okay. Red Cloud in the end is going to see all of these forts abandoned and burn them all to the ground. But before that happens, he's going to come up with a plan to get these guys to stop building more forts and stop sending. One, he goes on the warpath, hitting all the vulnerable targets. He just figured out where all the little ranches and stagecoach areas and all that are, and just wipes them out real quick. And that's about 200 people that are dead. And he's just like, leave. That's all I want is you just leave, and all this will end. So The forts are doing the opposite. They're getting more troops coming in. They're stockpiling ammunition. They're stockpiling food because they know that those supply routes coming into the forts can easily be cut off. And they're under heavy guard and this and that, and they've got some veterans from the Civil War out there, both commanders and troops, and they're like, this time we're gonna win, right? Well, they got this guy named Fetterman who had mediocre Civil War career, but he's definitely brave. Nobody would say he wasn't, and he goes out to, I guess, whip the
I'm
Indians.
foreshadowing what happens to Fetterman here.
Yeah, he's going to get orders to not go over this one ridge that, if you go past it, then the guys in the fort can't see you. And so he's under strict orders.
Don't go past that ridge or the people in the fort won't be able to see you. Paul's there because we got a dead Lincoln from Abortion Survivor who just says meep. It reminds me of a quick joke. What is small and young and breathes underwater?
Fish?
Not a baby. Horrible.
Yeah. Man. Anyway.
Yeah, it is at a certain point, but anyway. That's the only abortion joke I had when they had Abortion Survivors their name. They donated a dead Lincoln, so there's your dad joke. Go say that at the dinner table. All right. Any others? Speak now, forever hold your peace. Oh, yep. Emil Young sends in 2 dead Lincolns or a dead Hamilton if you prefer, and says, hi, what's the name of the Ninja song 07? You mean the one of our sister at my wedding singing I Want to Be Ninja? That's all over the internet now. Oh, you mean the thank you thing? This thing? Hold on. This or this thing. Where the fuck is it? This? That is literally every single song in Japan. That's how it starts. There's no that. It's just like, just sounded Japanesey. I just put it in, it's like every stereotype ever. I mean, come on, you've got a an Uchiwa hair with chopsticks, and like we went over the top.
I want that as a door chime.
What's that?
I want every time someone opens the door for that, just either that or like the staircase sound from Zelda.
That's what happens every time my wife enters a room. That music plays. No, every time she opens the door. No. Oh, the Zelda dee 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 dee. That would be pretty fun. Like,
yeah. Somebody would get.
Yeah, I mean, just record it off of my show if you really want it. I don't know the name of it. Pretty easy to play.
Outside of these forts, they have these armed men that are cutting down more wood to build more forts and to build more wagons and to build everything, right? So they're out there cutting a road, but they're also using the lumber that they cut down to add on to the forts and make them bigger and this and that. And they routinely get their ass kicked by the Indians. So now what they started doing is putting armed guards out there along with armed woodcutters so they could defend themselves, and they're not too far away from the fort so they could get reinforcements from the fort. Fetterman is going to have 30 cavalry and 50 infantry about, okay? And then a couple of armed civilians that have these repeating rifles that he brings with him, because the woodcutters are getting attacked, and it's, half a mile away, and they can see the dust cloud from all the horses, and they hear the gunfire, and they know they're being attacked. And they've also got signal stations, like flags that are telling them they're approaching from this direction. There's this many, whatever. And so Fetterman goes out and he's going to assist the woodcutters. And they tell him, okay, but don't go over that ridge. Stay to where everybody in the fort can see you the whole time, all the way there. And all of a sudden the firing stops at the woodcutters. So like maybe they broke off the attack. I think it's over. He's like pissed. I'm going anyway. And you know what? I'm going to take a shortcut over this ridge. Crazy Horse and those guys were standing on that ridge, mooning him and really just like giving it to him. And they're shooting at him, can't hit him. Two Moon, no. It's still Roman Nose, Crazy Horse, Red Cloud, Sitting Bull. But mostly it's Crazy Horse and Red Cloud. And Crazy Horse runs the length of the fort 3 times. And Roman Nose does it too, but they shoot Roman Nose's horse. But they don't hit either one of them. Crazy Horse stops and cleans ice and snow, or pretends to, of his horse's hoof, like on his knees, like really like, fuck you, you can't hit me, go ahead, shoot at me, I'm going to stand still. It's one thing to hit somebody galloping on a horse. It's another is somebody just sitting there cleaning their horse's hoof off. And everybody's firing at him and nobody hits him. And
that magic power, man.
They're just so angry that they fell for it again. They went over Lodge Trail Ridge, which is the name of, I should have said that in the beginning, but I've already dropped so many names. They went over Lodge Trail Ridge and they get down at the bottom is like a little creek and it's really shrubby with little bushes and shit. And there's 1,000 Indians in there. And Crazy Horse and his guys who were being chased, they cross each other and make an X. And that was the signal to everybody pop up and let these guys have it. And they do. And now these are trained infantry and cavalry for the U.S. And they're not pussies, right? So they fire back and they start to clump up and beat a retreat and get behind boulders and find defensive positions. And they've got good firepower. And they do have a couple repeating rifles as well. All of them die. All 81 of them die. Not one wounded, not one survivor. They're all killed. And it takes like not even a few minutes. The last guy that got killed was a German. He was a bugle player, young guy. And he's the only body that they don't mutilate. They actually put a buffalo hide over top of him. Like they showed respect to this man because in the end, when he had fired all of his gunshots and he's already got a couple arrows sticking out of him, he charged them with his bugle and started beating people with the bugle. And they killed him, but they left him with his bugle and everything and put a buffalo hide over him. So they didn't touch him, didn't mutilate him. Everybody else, they stripped him naked, cut their dick off, put it in their mouth, that kind of shit. But
as you do.
This bugleman, his name was Adolf, actually Adolf Metzger or something like that.
No way.
His bugle is look it up. His bugle's in Wyoming right now. It's on display in a museum. It has dents all over it. I know his first name was Adolf, but I'm trying to remember his last name. Anyhow, the rest of them got killed. Captain Brown, Fetterman, they're all dead. And this is a pretty big slaughter because up until this point, 28, 30, this is 81. So that's more than double the amount that America has lost in any battle against the Lakota so far. And it's showing some real resistance that they didn't do this to some civilian wagon train, right? These are troops. There were 2 civilians who volunteered to go, but the rest of them were all veterans of the Civil War, and including Fetterman and Captain Brown was a badass. But They all get killed.
81 went in, 81 disappeared.
Yep. One of them, they impaled him on a tree and they found him with 50 arrows. They just used him as target practice.
That's more than died in the first Gulf War.
Right? Yeah. And this is in like 13 minutes. So the U.S. is
By
angry,
the way, I actually have a clip of our sister's drunken escapade that went all over the internet.
Not her, dude.
Can I? No, I got it. I got it. Here we go.
To take down Chow one day, he pulled a ninja move. It got me to be fooled. You know what? Maybe I too could be ninja. I want to be ninja. I want to be ninja. I want to chop, chop, chop Chow down. Take Chow down to Chinatown. I want to be ninja. I started training hard. I think I could go far. I am a natural. That's matter factual. I learned to chop real hard. I fight with credit card. I use my nunchucks even while feeding ducks. I throw my ninja star also very far. I do karate moves with a go-girl.
I almost a ninja. My kids like that song though.
Oh man,
It's bad.
The thing is 90% of dudes would still sleep with that chick.
Yeah, simp's gonna simp. Well, I'm getting a call.
Yep. They call the Fetterman fight the Fetterman massacre, but it's really a battle because it's infantry and cavalry, right? Who disobeyed their own commander's orders, went after Crazy Horse and got murked. So that's kind of the last straw for Grant because, again, there's that transcontinental railroad they need to protect. They already sent 3 armies out, lost dozens of people, hundreds of horses, couldn't find anybody, spent a lot of money they didn't have because they're already trying to pay the debt from the Civil War, and it's just not worth it. It wasn't like fear that the Lakota were going to invade St. Louis or something. It was more just, this isn't worth it. You know, Sheridan, you got to keep these miners out of the Black Hills for a little while. Just give me a year, you know, to get the logistics, and we'll gather some other large armies and get them out there and take care of this. And Sherman kind of agrees with that, and they do yield to Red Cloud, even though they always had planned to come back later. They buy about 8 years apiece. Red Cloud got out of this, and he's a hero for it. You know, he got the forts to be abandoned. He burned them all to the ground.
Satisfying.
The U.S. weren't allowed to come in there at all. It was Lakota territory on the maps. Bam. They could hunt buffalo and live the way that they had, free as the wind, for another 8 years. And then the U.S. came back with 3 armies. And this was Sheridan's plan. Sheridan was going to have the Montana column, which is under a guy named Gibbons, approach from the northwest. He was going to have this guy named Terry, which is who Custer is with. General Terry is going to come from the east. And then General Crook, who is going to come from the south with another army. 3 different armies. And they're all coming from different directions, west, east, south, to where they know somewhere in that Powder River Valley is Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse. Red Cloud, after taking a tour of DC and seeing the U.S. Arsenal and going to New York City and all that stuff, he came back and was like, I'm done. I told him I wouldn't fight anymore, and I'm not. You know, he bought him 8 years apiece, and now he's handing the torch to Crazy Horse, who's of the Oglala band, and he couldn't have picked a better person. And Sitting Bull is still fighting. So Sitting Bull is kind of your overall commander at this point, but Crazy Horse is the real, you know, hero. Crazy Horse is going to deal with Crook first. Now, Crook had been at the Second Manassas when the Union Army got his ass whipped by Stonewall Jackson. He was at Antietam. This guy has seen real war. He's seen real bloodshed, and he knows what it's about. And he's not some pencil pusher that got his job because he knew somebody either. He wasn't a general during the Civil War. He's going to climb and rank the hard way. And after the Civil War, he does have some experience fighting Indians out in California. So he knows that, as he said, to catch an Indian, you need an Indian. So he's going to ally with this guy named, I love this name, Washeki, who is a Shoshone chief. And his men had actually been trained by a former Confederate captain, and they knew how to fight, and they were well armed and very, very good soldiers. The problem is there's only 82 of them. Okay. But they're very significant in this fight. They're guides. And they also, add 82 good fighters to your force of about 1,500 people. So Crook has them, and he allies with another guy of the Crow, which is probably the biggest enemy of the Lakota is the Crow. And that guy's name was Mini Coups, which a coup is when you would sneak into an enemy's camp and like touch them with the coup stick. That was like more brave and honorable than killing somebody. If you could go in there and just like steal their horse, give them a tomahawk, like a wedgie, and then leave and not even kill anyone, that was considered crazy brave. The deeper behind enemy lines you could go. And, like when Jeb Stuart took McClellan's uniform.
Spanked him with a saber. That Mosby.
Yeah, that kind of crap. So Mini Coups is like a cool name if you know what it means. Anyhow, that's the Crow leader. Got the Washeki, the Shoshone, and then General Crook with 1,500 white boys from Ohio and Iowa and Missouri and all over.
All right, Paul's there.
And
Paul's there. Feoviejo. Feo Viejo or something. I don't know. Nice to see another Dawson Brother collab. Thank you. And then Dogface Pony Soldier 33 sends in 6, just so it's not Lincoln. It says, what the fuck? A Lincoln with a cactus is a Dogface Pony Soldier? Rest in peace, Fighting Joe Wheeler, who died that day. KGB Josh sends in a Dead Hamilton and says, Scott, at what point did you learn about Lakota or the Civil War or the dickhead Lincoln? In California, your history teacher barely touches these subjects, then proceeds to talk about social justice.
I learned about it on my own mostly. When I was 15, I hurt myself really bad snowboarding, and I couldn't do shit. Like I couldn't play football or I couldn't do anything. And at that point, I'd never read a book that I wasn't forced to by school. And I'd gotten this Civil War book for Christmas called Lee's Terrible Swift Sword. It's like 280 pages. And I read the whole thing in 4 days. And I had to be immobilized to even give it a shot, But I read that. And then after that, I never stopped reading. Read about a book a week usually. And I have a whole shelf of Civil War books that I've read. And I just got into that first, I think. And I was living in Virginia at the time, so I could go see some of these battlefields and things. It was just fascinating to me. And we have relatives in the war and all that. And then from there, I just started getting into history in general. And when I went to college, I blossomed in that field. And as far as the Lakota, I got into that. I was probably about 18, and then revisited it recently because I thought, that's a cool story, Red Cloud. Let me go freshen up on that. And I found a whole lot more because I'm a better researcher now, obviously, than I was at 18.
Red Cloud. Apparently my mic was muted for some of that. Good thing most of the show's been you talking anyway, but I'll read the Shekelchats again. Nice to see another Dawson Brothers collab. Let's see. Then there was what the fuck? A Lincoln with a cactus as the dog-faced pony soldier. Rest in peace, Joe Wheeler died that day. And then Scott, at what point did you learn about Lakota or the Civil War? The dickhead Lincoln in California, your history teacher barely touches these subjects and then proceeds to talk about social justice, was the question. And then Zionist Cuck says, yo, Ryan, entertain us, the chat, with an insane story that both you and Scott were part of. Love you both. Also, greetings from Ireland. Hey, I might be over there in a month or so. I'll be in London, and if I go that halfway around the world, I'll probably pop over to Ireland, maybe try to get my YouTube back for the second time. Who knows? Entertaining story. Is this not entertaining enough? Learning about history. I mean, this is very similar to what's going on in Gaza. I mean, yeah, tell a story about some crazy shit you probably should be arrested for. How about no? How about change the color?
Well, we tell them the Sawyer story after this. That's a good one.
The chicken story is great.
Yeah. The
first day at work, a car plows through the wall. We'll get in that later. All right. Actually, I think this is a good place to pause. You got 3 armies out west. It's it leads up to the crazy horse portion of this.
Yeah, there's gonna be 3 battles and 3 victories for the Lakota, but the only one anyone's heard of is the Custer's Last Stand. But the other 2 are more fascinating, I think, and they're just overshadowed by the final event. But
I think they all know what happened there. But maybe not.
These are people with no formal military training at all, going up against 3 veterans from the Civil War with good troops from all over, north and south and west. They're just their asses are completely whipped, and he does it a different way all 3 times. And the way that he does it is
we're gonna do it. You're gonna do it next time.
You could do it. I'll save it, but
we'll save it. I have to do it next time because I got have to go to the hospital because they have a kid that needs a shot who really, really hates needles, and I am the one that can Jedi that in. So here's a song. Howdy. We are going to continue, and you can hear this right now. History Dude on Substack. It's all on there anyway for free, but you should add his Substack anyway if you can.
All the treaties that were broken, all the leaders you have still. Custer died for your sin. Custer died for your sin. Now a new day must begin. Custer died.